It's definitely a pleasure to be wherever I am, somewhere in Tennessee, I think. Uh, I am, I love this Zoom thing. I really, really do. I'm just going to throw my 10 cents in here and say, I think this is making history in Alcoholics Anonymous right now. I think they're going to write about this in the forward to the 5th edition. I think they're going to write about this period of our history significantly in there. And I love the fact that we're all a part of it. I love the fact that we accepted this technology when our back was up against the wall. And, Alcoholics Anonymous always wait till our back is up against the wall, don't we? And then we go, hey, maybe there's another way. So anyway, and we're survivors. Anyway, so my sobriety date is January 21st, 1987. I arrived in Alcoholics Anonymous at 25 years old. Take a look. That is a while ago. That is a lifetime ago. And there's a lot of things in my life now at 33 years sober that I think are really important. There's things that I spend a lot of time doing, things that I have passion for that, but there is nothing that is more important in my life than that very first sentence that I said to you. And that is, my name's Karl. I'm an alcoholic. The fact that I'm an alcoholic has been the thing that has driven my bus my whole life, drunk or sober. It's really the thing that has been the center point of my life. The reason I believe I'm an alcoholic is really very simple. The reason I believe I'm an alcoholic is because I've got a really bizarre relationship with alcohol. And this strange relationship that I have with alcohol takes on a few forms. Now, the first part of this strange relationship that I have with alcohol happens when I drink it. A really strange thing happens when I drink booze. The book calls it an allergic reaction. The book says the symptom of this allergic reaction that I get when I drink alcohol is what they refer to as something called the phenomenon of craving. And the best way that I can describe this thing that the book calls the phenomenon of craving in my life is that it seems like whenever I drink booze, the more booze I drink, the thirstier I get. It happens with nothing else that I drink. An example of that is I've got this bottle of water. And over the next 45 minutes to 4 hours that I'm talking with you, I know people just went, whoa, getting nervous. No, over the next 45 minutes that I'm talking with you, I'll probably drink about half this bottle, but before I go to bed tonight, I'm pretty sure I'm going to drink this whole bottle of water. But I can absolutely guarantee you that once I finish that bottle of water, I am not going to go get a case of water and lock myself in a cheap motel room, right? There is no chance that 3 a.m. I'm going to, I need another case. How do I get another case of water? Right? It's not going to happen. But if that was the only thing that made me alcoholic, this bizarre physical reaction that I get, this craving, if that was the sum total of my relationship to alcohol, well then, just say no would have wiped out alcoholism, right? In the early 80s, Nancy Reagan came out and said, just say no. If that would have worked, I would have, and I imagine you would have gone, no, and just gone on and lived a happy, successful life, just saying no. But you see, I have this other strange part of my relationship with alcohol. And that happens when I'm not drinking it. The book calls this the mental obsession. They refer to it as the strange mental blank spot. They also refer to it as the thought process that precedes the first drink. They have wonderful examples and stories about that in the chapter more about alcoholism. If you haven't read it, please read about Jim and Fred, where 1 minute it's a bad idea to take a drink, and literally a minute later, it's a good idea to take a drink. And that is really the gist or the crux of my problem. But the best way to describe it in my life is that it seems like no matter how much pain and suffering I may have caused from my last drunk, I seem to have a mind that will always paint a picture that makes it okay for me to take another drink no matter what. So therefore, because of these two components of my relationship to alcohol, number one, I cannot drink successfully because of this strange physical craving that I get. But at the very same time, of and by myself, I cannot not drink successfully. I'm damned if I do, and I'm damned if I don't. It's the ultimate catch-22 we call alcoholism. Because I swear to you, if I could do either one of those two things, either drink successfully or on my own not drink successfully, I promise you, I would do that. Actually, I just lied. And I think Phil or Stu had sent me a text message. Please, Karl, don't lie to these people. And I just lied. I actually have no interest in drinking successfully. I have no interest in drinking successfully. I used to think I did, but I didn't quite understand what drinking successfully was because I've never done it. I have no personal experience at drinking successfully. But now, since I've been sober a long time, I've read about it extensively, and I have witnessed it and discussed with other people what drinking successfully means to them. And this is what I found out, and maybe you'll be surprised too. Apparently, drinking successfully entails drinking approximately 2 drinks and stopping. Well, let that idea just sort of settle in your soul and sit there for a minute. 2 drinks and stop. I've got no interest in that. I literally have no interest in that at all. In fact, that idea makes me nervous. I actually get a little jittery just thinking about the possibility. I would rather, there's 175 people on here. There's probably a few accounts with multiple people on there. So let's say there's 180 people on here right now. I would rather all 180 of you unmute your microphones and scream obscenities at me for the next hour, rather than for me to be caught in a situation where I have 2 drinks in me and I can't get any more. That literally is a nightmare scenario for me. So I set this relationship up with alcohol that I just described to you right from the get-go when I first started drinking, and I started drinking significantly late compared to most people in AA. I was 11. That's when I started drinking. That's kind of late. I'm from the Los Angeles area. It's kind of late. I mean, we got guys around LA that are getting sober at 12 and 13, and they're on their second treatment center, for God's sake. But my family lived in Seattle. A quick rundown of young childhood. I was born in Helena, Montana. When I was 4 years old, my father packed the whole family up and we moved to the island of Borneo in Southeast Asia. We came back when I was 9 years old. Family moved to Seattle.
Wow.
And I'm, do we got somebody unmuted here? Prior to taking my first drink, I was doing well in school. I loved my family. I was playing sports. I played violin. Good grades. I took a drink, and by the time I'm 14, all of that is out of my life. And literally, just to summarize, as a young teenager, my hair is down onto my shoulders and in front of my bloodshot eyes, and my vocabulary is, "Hey, man. Wow. Hey, man." I call my mother man. "Hey, man." Right. And of course, my mother was losing her mind, and my parents, really good people, good, successful people. And they had no idea what to do with what was happening to their youngest son. And they didn't understand alcoholism, nor should they. Non-alcoholics don't need to understand alcoholism. So therefore, they tried to change the people, places, and things in my life. Right. They took me out of the public school, put me into a private school. They would restrict me from seeing certain people. And, but if you change the people, place, and things in somebody's life like mine, all that happens is that I'm loaded with different people in different places, ruining different things. That's all that happens. By the time I'm 18, I barely scrape out of the public school system there in Seattle after getting kicked out of the private school system. And my parents decided that Seattle is the problem. Get them out of Seattle, things get better. They sent me 300 miles away to Washington State University. And I spent 3 years at that university on my parents' money. And in that 3 years, I got approximately 10 credits. At any given time, my grade point average matched my blood alcohol content, about a 0.25. I did nothing at that school. By the time I'm 22, this little story I'm about to tell you will let you know exactly where I stood with my family. Now, my father was Swedish. My mother is Icelandic. Therefore, I look like a polar bear. And I don't know whether this custom I'm about to tell you about is Scandinavian or whether it's Lutheran. I don't know. But at Christmas time, my parents wouldn't just send out Christmas cards to their friends and relatives. My parents would send out this big, long Christmas letter. that said everything the family had been doing that year. And when I was about 22, I got a hold of one of these letters that had been sent out the previous Christmas. And as I read it, it let me know exactly where I stood with my family. Now, the first paragraph talked about what my parents had been doing that year. Another impressive year, I'm sure. The next paragraph talked about what the Morris children had been doing that year. And that paragraph went something like this. Our oldest daughter, Christina, just graduated from Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, with a master's degree in human resources. She's now working for a large pharmaceutical company in the Midwest. She traveled to Europe this summer. She saw this, she saw that. Her hobbies are this, this, and this. She's a very happy young woman. We are very proud of her. Our oldest son, Eric, just graduated from Western Washington State University with a degree in marketing. He's now working for a large advertising firm here in downtown Seattle. He loves to golf. He loves to travel. He's engaged to be married to this wonderful woman named Mary Lou, who works for a very small company here in Seattle named Microsoft. It was small at one time. And they love to golf together. They love to travel together. He's a very happy young man. We are very proud of him. Our youngest son, Karl, just turned 22. That was it. That was it. My parents were actually being very kind. They had a tendency to tell the truth, and they didn't want what they knew about my life to be in that Christmas letter. Long story short, it's about the same time. I'm about 22, 23 years old, and a really bad night happened. A drug deal goes badly. Another arrest comes, and I needed to get out of town, so I joined the United States Navy. What I'm about to tell you should concern you if you care anything about the security of the United States. But on my way into the Navy, I passed a potential test. It's called the ASVAB test. And this test that I took qualified me to become a nuclear engineer. That should concern you, that the United States Navy would have any type of system in place that would even maybe, possibly, or even remotely allow somebody like me near anything nuclear. However, they made me take another test when I showed up at that base for boot camp, and I could not pass that particular test. That test is called a urinalysis test, is what it's called. I never knew how to study for those things. Should have been kicked out of the Navy. Series of events and family connections allowed me to stay in. They took away that 2-year nuclear school, and they sent me directly out to the fleet. Now I'm out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. I'm on a Spruance-class destroyer. We are hunting Russian submarines. And I got to tell you, for the first time in my life, I started to feel like I have meaning and purpose. I enjoyed the camaraderie of the Navy. I enjoyed the challenge of the tasks that were put in front of me. In fact, I was experiencing what many young men experience in order to mature into an actual adult. However, I am alcoholic. Alcoholism laughs at a young man who thinks he may have found what he needs in his life, and he doesn't address his alcoholism. Because, I do pretty well when that ship was out at sea. But however, that ship would pull into a port and I would take a drink. And I literally would forget that I'm in the Navy. I would take a drink and I would literally go on 3-day binges. At this point in my life, I'm literally going on 3, sometimes 4-day binges. And it didn't matter whether I actually had 3 days of liberty or not. Or it didn't matter whether the ship was actually going to be in that port for 3 days or not. I got to tell you, it's a strange feeling coming out of one of these 3-day drunks and finding myself in a foreign country at 6 a.m. standing on a large pier, looking up and down that pier going, boy, oh boy, there was a destroyer here the other day, right? Navy frowns on this behavior. I've been in the Navy approximately 2 years at this point, and I came to in a cheap motel room in downtown San Diego. Our home port was in San Diego. I came to in a cheap motel room in downtown San Diego. I had started drinking on Thursday. It's now Monday morning. I am late getting back to my ship. I run out of that cheap motel room and I get in my car. My car is all, you know the old joke. Our cars are dying of alcoholism right along with us. My car is held together by rubber bands. I'm racing back to try to get back to the base. And this is pre 9/11, so security's high, but nothing like it is today. And they had this one lone guard shack at the back end of the 32nd Street base, and I was coming in. And what I always did at the end of one of these drunks is I always saved a pint in my car, and I would be downing that pint on my way into the ship, and I'm trying to keep my car on the road. And it was sort of the way to nurse a hangover and to keep the drunk going. And this particular morning, I lost control of the car right outside the Navy base, and I slid sideways. And, at the front of every Navy base, there's a guard shack where a Marine stands duty. These Marines take their job very seriously. And under normal circumstances, you're supposed to slowly and politely pull your vehicle up to that guard shack. You're supposed to show your military ID. He will check the sticker on your front windshield. If everything's in order, he'll allow you to proceed onto the base. As I said, I lost control of the car at about 40 miles an hour right outside the base. My car slid sideways, hit a cement median, and glanced off it, and bang, right through that guard shack. I can still see this Marine doing this big dive out of there. Thank God those Marines are in really good shape. This Marine took a big dive, did a quick somersault. He was back out, weapon drawn. And it was one of these mornings. God, I hated these mornings where sirens were going off. There's a bunch of broken glass, twisted metal. People are screaming and yelling, running in circles, and they all seem to be pointing at me like this is all my fault. Now I'm standing there completely dumbfounded. I don't quite know what's going on either. And I'm wondering, why are you pointing at me? And of course I was arrested. Marine was all right. I was at the Naval Hospital. They're patching me up for minor injuries, and they're reading the new charges on me, and new charges are nothing significant in my life. That's, I said, what happens in a guy's life like mine about every 90 days if you're living the way I'm living. But the most significant thing that happened that morning is the Navy doctors prescribed this stuff called antabuse for me. I was now under orders to show up at sick bay every single morning before quarters and sit in a chair, and the corpsman would make me stick my tongue out. And they'd put this little white pill on my tongue and make me sit there for a half an hour to make sure the antabuse actually entered my system. Now, over the next 7 to 10 days, I started to experience the most cunning, baffling, and powerful side of this thing we call alcoholism. And that is I had no alcohol in my system at all. And I was literally going insane. See, I have a firm belief that every alcoholic has windows of opportunity for sobriety throughout their life. And the key is what happens during that window of opportunity for sobriety, right? We kind of call it the moment of clarity. Well, I think most alcoholics have a lot of different moments of clarity. And it depends on what happens during that brief moment, that little window of opportunity. What had always happened for me, because I'd had other windows of opportunity for sobriety after some sort of catastrophe, a friend overdosing as a teenager, flunking out of college, wrecked cars, getting arrested. And you promise the parents, and the family intervenes, and everybody gets angry, and and dropping out of college. And you see, my parents, when that would happen, they would always and now the Navy, they would always put me in front of well-meaning, highly educated professionals, some sort of therapist, counselor, psychiatrist, psychologist, maybe a pastor. Now the military is now having me in front of a chaplain and a psychiatrist. I have regular appointments with both. And these are well-meaning, highly educated people. But they always, during these times when I might be sober for a little while, they always wanted to have conversations they always wanted to talk to me about me and why I am doing these things. And they would say things like, what seems to be the matter with you that you would be doing this? Why would you drink again after let's talk about what's right. And I ain't talking. I got defense mechanisms up that I'm aware of and others that I'm not aware of. But if I would have been willing to talk, or if I had the vocabulary, I didn't have the vocabulary nor the knowledge of my alcoholism at the time, but if I did, I would have responded to these well-meaning, highly educated people with something similar to this. I would have said, yes, I see why you're shocked. I see that to you, it looks like the price I'm paying for my drinking is literally intolerable, and you can't see why I would do that. But I would follow it up with this statement. I would say, but if you knew how I felt when I wasn't drinking, you wouldn't ask me why I drink. You see, there's only one thing worse than the price I'm paying for my drinking, and that's the way that I feel when I'm not drinking. And I had no idea that in that thought, in that sort of description that I'm describing, it encompasses my alcoholism. I can't drink successfully. I cannot not drink successfully. Where do you go? I didn't understand that that's actually exactly sort of the entrance card to Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know it at the time. I lasted 10 days on that antabuse, and I went AWOL from my ship. I locked myself in a little motel room in downtown San Diego, Plaza Hotel, 4th and Broadway. It's still there, actually, and this would have been May of 1986 that I'm talking about. And in May of 1986, the Plaza Hotel cost $13 a night. I checked about a year and a half ago, and the Plaza Hotel now costs $19 a night. It's a fine establishment. You should check the Yelp reviews sometimes. And I locked myself in a little hotel room, and I had a bottle of vodka and a shot glass, and I set it on this rickety little end table that was in that room, and I sat on the edge of the bed, and as I stared at the bottle of vodka, I remembered that the Navy doctors had given me a very stern warning about drinking on top of antabuse. They had said, son, you need to understand that if you drink on top of this antabuse, you will get one of two reactions. One reaction is you will get violently ill. The other reaction is you might die. I remember looking at the bottle and I thought, well, I wonder which reaction I'm going to get. So I took one shot and nothing happened. Authority had lied to me again as far as I was concerned. I waited about 2 minutes just to make sure, and I took another shot. All of a sudden I felt tingling in the face, so I looked in this cracked little mirror that was in this hotel room, and bright red, blotchy and purple in places. Took another shot. All of a sudden I could feel my heart going boom, boom, boom. Looked at my shirt. I was drenched in sweat, and all of a sudden I was like hyperventilating. We're doing all right so far. Any of you guys that think this is funny, there's something really, really wrong with you. I got to tell you, there's something wrong with you. I took another shot, and up it came. My second sponsor was a man named Eddie Cochran. His sobriety date was December 2nd, 1951. He passed away in 1999 with 47 years of sobriety. He's literally one of the pioneers of Southern California Alcoholics Anonymous, truly. He called the next thing that happened to me projectile regurgitation. This is a new level of puking I'm unfamiliar with, right? Because we all know normal puking. It's one of the tools for living you got out there as an alcoholic, right? You're out there in the middle of a good drunk, little sour taste comes up in the back of your throat. Maybe a little bit comes up in the mouth. And we all know, based upon our experience, we have 30 to 60 seconds to find a bathroom if there happens to be one. If we're driving, we've learned our lesson, get the window down. And if you don't get the window down, it's bad news. You don't got to tell us twice. But you get the warning. But here on the antabuse, there's no warning. It's just, sort of this Linda Blair spray across the room. Thank God the Plaza Hotel is the type of hotel room where the toilet is in the same room with the bed. It's a design feature, I believe, maybe to make convicts feel more at home upon release. I'm not really sure. But I found the magic of drinking on top of antabuse, and that is if you hang in there. And that's a very important feature if you're going to try to drink on top of antabuse. If you're going to drink on antabuse, you cannot half measure it. In fact, if you're going to drink on top of antabuse, you might need to reach down deep inside yourself for a level of commitment you don't even know you have. But I found that if I kept drinking and I kept puking and I kept drinking and I kept puking for about an hour to an hour and a half, enough of the antabuse would then kick out of my system and I would quit throwing up and I would just be left with red face, hyperventilating and sweating. And I'm all right with that. So I drank on top of antabuse the last 7 months of my drinking. There's no other words to describe this other than desperation drinking. My second to my last drunk, I was left for dead in a motel parking lot in a part of San Diego called National City. I remember I was out on the stairs, a third floor of a motel on the outside stairs. You can tell, fine establishment, right? And all of a sudden, there were lots of fists flying. They apparently were not mine. And then there was a lot of blood. That apparently was mine. And the next thing I knew, I came to on an operating table. And there were men and women with surgical masks on with tools in their hands. That's not a good sight. Well, these days, you come out of a blackout, you're probably going to see surgical masks, right? No big deal, would not indicate any problem, right? But back then in 1986, you see surgical masks when you wake up, you're in trouble. My last night of drinking, I'm being let out of the San Diego jail. I'm being transferred from the civilian authorities back to the military authorities. The handcuffs are extra tight that morning. The shore patrol military police tried to bring me back to my ship. That morning, the officer deck put his arm up and said, wrong answer. Orders have already been processed on this loser, and the orders state 90 days in the brig, bad conduct discharge, or treatment. Now, as I was there in my handcuffs, and he said, or treatment, I kind of went, Now, it wasn't because I thought treatment was a good idea. I didn't even really know what treatment was. I'd heard of it. I'd heard of Alcoholics Anonymous, but but I didn't really know what it was. You can't really be out there drinking and doing what we do out there and not hear about it. I mean, you're in the bar and Joe disappears. You say, what happened to Joe? And they go, oh man, he got a DUI. He's at the A&A classes, right? I never followed up and said, say, I'm curious. Tell me more about that. No, you sort of avoid it and go, oh, wow, right? Or, Fred disappears out of the crack house. You say, what happened to Fred? Well, he went to treatment. And you don't go, hey, that sounds interesting. Tell me about, no, you don't do that. You just avoid the subject. The reason it perked my interest, though, that morning was because I figured that this treatment thing, if I could get it, might help me with the next set of inevitable charges that were coming my way from the night before. I now know that it wouldn't have mattered what I was thinking or feeling that morning because I was in handcuffs. And I don't know about your experience with handcuffs, but throughout my life, whenever I was in handcuffs, whoever had me in handcuffs, never once did they ever turn to me and say, so what's your opinion on what happens next? Right? When you're in handcuffs, you go where they say. And this is the way that I showed up at this military treatment center up in the north end of San Diego. And I remember vividly that morning that they put me behind locked doors before they were willing to take the handcuffs off me. There's no better description of who Karl Morris is without Alcoholics Anonymous than that. The country I'm supposed to be serving, the society in which I'm supposed to be living and contributing to, is only willing to take the handcuffs off me when the doors are locked behind me. That's who I am without you. So I'm in this military treatment center, and I got to tell you, as far as I'm concerned, it's an excellent treatment center. At least it was back in the late 80s, early 90s. I know they've changed a lot of policies since, but at that time, what the main gist of everything in that treatment center, other than medically separating my body from alcohol, giving me counseling, great, a lot of physical fitness, great, wonderful. Any human being could benefit from all of that. But 4 to 5 nights a week, white vans would pull up in front of those barracks, and 6 or 7 of us would be put into each one of those vans. And those vans would take off out into town, somewhere in the San Diego County area, to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I just love the fact that Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole allows outside agencies to send people to open meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous and allows us to sit in the back and listen and watch Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I didn't understand the difference between watching Alcoholics Anonymous and actually doing Alcoholics Anonymous. But I got to tell you, just the fact that we were allowed to sit in the back of those large Southern California meetings and listen to your stories literally changed my life. And here, in retrospect, is why I believe that's true. See, this is now another window of opportunity for sobriety, right? My last one had been when they put me on antabuse, and I'm not drinking for a short period. Time before that, flunking out of college and everybody losing their mind. And each one of those times, I would remember, I told you, I always put in front of well-meaning, highly educated people that wanted to discuss me with me, right? They wanted, they're asking me questions, and I ain't participating. But now I'm sitting in front of you guys, and you guys don't ask me about me. You barely even know I'm there. It's a pretty large meeting. You guys ask if there's anybody new, and I don't remember whether I actually, but you guys seem to just talk about yourselves. In fact, incessantly talk about yourselves, kind of the way I'm doing tonight, right? But in that, a few things happen. See, I'm the type of guy that will dissect a situation and try to figure out why you're here, why you're willing to discuss with me, who's paying you, what's your motive. There's no way for me to logically figure out that there was any motive. You didn't even really know I was there. There was 150 to 200 people there were sitting in the back. You don't even know I'm there, but you are literally telling my story. And these people seem to take their responsibility at those podiums. I didn't understand it at the time, but what they were doing, they took their responsibility at that podium pretty seriously. And it seemed like these people could tell a great story about themselves, whether it was 3 minutes, 10 minutes, or 45 minutes. They really seem to be able to describe alcoholism in their own terms of their own life. And God, I tell you also, whenever they got me to laugh involuntarily, they would tell some horrendous, heinous story. And I'm like, oh, I'm laughing at that. I look back at that as a time when if I'm laughing, every single defense mechanism I got is down involuntarily. And during those few minutes, while I'm laughing at your alcoholism and actually my own alcoholism, God could gently slap me across the face with my own alcoholism. And I believe what happened to me in that 45 days and those probably 20 meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous that I was taken to during those 45 days. I believe what happened to me is what Alcoholics Anonymous wants to have happen to any new person. I identified the hook was in my cheek. Like any fisherman there, I'm sure there are. But there's a lot of work to be done before I actually landed in the center. But the hook was in my cheek. You had me, right? And I didn't understand the level of work or the level of surrender that it was going to take, the level of willingness to follow direction and give up my old ideas and to take a completely different path in life. I didn't understand that at the time. But it seems like Alcoholics Anonymous has sort of started to trick me into these things anyway. They didn't outline everything I needed to do right away. I got out of that military treatment center. I had 45 days. And I knew one thing. I knew that I only felt safe when I was physically in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I remember getting out of that military treatment center instantly feeling like I could get struck drunk any moment. And they're absolutely the truth because, I had 45 days. I had a lot of information. I was physically feeling better than I'd felt since a young kid. But there'd been no spiritual awakening, spiritual experience, or even a personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism. And I also didn't even understand what that was or that I needed that. But I did have this one piece of information that saved my life. And that was where this one meeting hall was that I had remembered from being taken there a couple of times in that van. And I drove straight there. The Cass Street Alano Club in Pacific Beach, north end of San Diego. Went to the Friday night Gong Show meeting. And I'm sitting in the back of that meeting that night at 6 p.m. and said the truth about my life. I got 45 days, got information. And one guy that night operating on his primary purpose. I'm sure there were many other men at that meeting that were operating on their primary purpose, which is to carry the message, talk to a new person. This guy was lurking around the back and he approached me rather aggressively. And he said, "Hey, never seen you here before. What are you doing?" And he said it kind of aggressively and he startled me. And at that point in my life, if you startle me, I might accidentally tell you the truth. If you speak with me gently and give me 30 seconds to answer, I will concoct a lie. But this guy kind of cornered me. "What are you doing?" And I go, "I don't know. I just got out of a Navy treatment center. It got me, dude. I don't know what I'm doing." This guy's eyes went bing, big smile went across his face. He looked like he had just hit the jackpot in Las Vegas. I didn't know that I was like the holy grail of Alcoholics Anonymous, a newcomer who accidentally admitted he didn't know what he was doing. But there was something else going on in this particular guy's life that particular Friday night that made him especially glad to meet me that particular night. This was a Friday night. Well, on Thursday night, this guy's girlfriend had left him the night before for one of his friends in his home group. So he was wondering what he was going to do with his weekend. He was just losing his mind. Homicide, suicide, get loaded, or grab this newcomer. He's like all over me all weekend. We went to like 18 meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. This guy was crazy over this woman. In between this barrage of meetings he dragged me to, in between each meeting, he'd throw me in the passenger side of his car. He wouldn't get in my car. My car was a death trap that you had to, that's a long story, but he'd throw me in the passenger side of his car. He'd start driving and he'd start yelling. He wouldn't even look at the road. He had like one of those AA radar cars that just made it to the next meeting, I guess. And he'd be yelling at me, "You got to go, you got a meeting. You got to go to meetings. You got to read the book. You got to get a sponsor. Damn her. You got to go to meetings. You got to read the book. Damn." He's like spitting on me. See, I didn't know it, but I was getting a very early introduction to your typical AA relationship breakup is what I was getting. But I'm so very glad that that guy, that night in his pain, was a guy in Alcoholics Anonymous who had done the work of Alcoholics Anonymous, who had taken the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And therefore, he understood that the solution to his pain was out of self, out of self, out of self. I am so glad that that guy that night was not at home underneath his covers, whining into his sponsor's answer machine. If you're younger than 25 years old, an answer machine is this box that used to sit on the kitchen counter and it would collect messages. Anyway, He might need to Google it. It'll be right next to pager and phone booth. But I'm so glad he was not at home whining into his sponsor's answer machine. Sponsor, where are you? I am hurt. I am dying here. Help me. Right? I'm so glad he was out dragging my sorry butt around. That he understood that, I'm sure he probably found his sponsor at a meeting in one of those 18 meetings. I didn't understand that. I saw him talking to a lot of older guys, right? Some of them would laugh and some would point back at me, better hang with that new guy, right? I was just a prop in this guy's weekend so he didn't do something really stupid. But by going to so many meetings in the same area of town with that guy that weekend, I learned something really valuable about how we go to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, especially when we're new. So, and what I learned, by going to so many meetings, I saw other people that were at multiple meetings that weekend. I didn't see anybody else doing 18 meetings, just me and that guy. But I saw other people that were at 2 or 3 meetings over that weekend. And what I learned about how we go to meetings, especially when we're new, I'm going to correlate it to a football game. Now, a football team is out there on the field for one reason and one reason only, to win the game. And how do they win that game? They will huddle up, they will make a plan, and they will do one play. Then they huddle up again, they make another plan, and then they do one play. Well, that's exactly what we do here in Alcoholics Anonymous. And the game around here is one day without a drink, you're a big winner. And how do we do that one day? We run in here and we huddle up and we go, remember, we're bodily and mentally different from our fellows. Great. And we go out there and we try a little of this and we try a little of that. And we run right back in. After that weekend with that guy, I had to report back to my ship on Monday morning, and I met the one other sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous on my ship. He was waiting for me. His name was Bob W. He was 23 years old. He had 16 months of sobriety. I was 25 years old, and I now had 48 days of sobriety. And this man, this 23-year-old man with 16 months became my first sponsor, basically just out of necessity. He was the one other sober guy on my ship. And I spent the first 2 years of my sobriety on the USS Cushing, Spruance-class destroyer still out there, and I had a lot of work to do, right? I had a lot of work to do to make up for a lot of stuff that I'd done wrong with the military. I didn't understand there was all that work ahead of me. But my first sponsor now, he didn't, I was the first one he had sincerely tried to work with. Yeah, he had picked up newcomers and drove them to meetings and stuff. He'd been on a couple of panels, but he was in the military too and in the ship, and it's hard to have a commitment or to sponsor somebody that's not on the ship because he was gone and there were no cell phones back then. We'd be gone for weeks and weeks at a time. So he had never really sponsored somebody. So I was the first one. And I'm so glad that step 12 says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message. It doesn't say we do it expertly. It doesn't even say we do it right. We just try our best. And that's what he was doing with me. What little he knew, he tried to impart with me. And then he often, every time that ship would pull into port, we would go to a payphone, first of all, to find out where the local AA meeting was, right? And we'd listen to some sort of answer machine, or maybe a live person would answer wherever we pulled in. But he would also dump in another 18 quarters and try to talk to his sponsor. And the conversation was also, what do I do with this guy next? Right? So his sponsor was really sponsoring both of us. And I kind of chuckle. His sponsor back in port was this old guy, almost 60 years old with like 30 years of sobriety, which I'm describing myself right now. We used to call him the old man. But anyway, he told him that he had to read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with me while the ship was out at sea. So every night when our ship was out at sea at 6 p.m., we would meet in engine room number 2 down in the battery shop. And we would read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous back and forth to each other. When I look back at those couple of years of us two and on that ship down in that little battery shop, where it's literally the blind leading the blind, Alcoholics Anonymous in its purest form. Neither one of us knew what we were doing. Neither one of us really knew what the solution truly was. We hadn't truly experienced the deep and profound alteration in our perception of life that comes with continued work in Alcoholics Anonymous, that we literally fundamentally change at the level of our soul. We didn't understand that, but you know what? Enough happened during that time that we both built a foundation for sobriety. And I got to just throw this in there. Bob W., my first sponsor, passed away in 2011 of cancer. He was still 16 months ahead of me. And I got to tell you, one of the most valuable events in my life. There's been a lot of them, but this has to be in the top 7 or 10 events. I'm attending his funeral up in Portland, Oregon. And 6 men that he sponsored up there in Portland come up to me at that funeral and they hand me this beat up, trashed big book that's held together with string. And I go, what is this? And he said, he made us promise that at the funeral, we would give this to you and you would know what it is. And I take off the string and pull off a rubber band. I open it up and it almost falls apart in my hands. And I see it. It's the book from the ship. It has both our sobriety dates in it. It has all the notes and highlighting that we did. And I just I lost it. I'm a little emotional about it right now because just at Christmas, a longtime friend of his, who's now 30, has the same amount of sobriety that he would have had. He had 35 years now. Called me up and said, I need a sponsor. And Bob used to talk about you so highly. And I feel I know you. Would you please sponsor me? It was like, I mean, life truly takes full circle sometimes. Anyway, 2 years sober, I got an honorable discharge out of the Navy. And this is a result of the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, an apparently merciful God and a personnelman that lost half my file. That's how that happened. And one of the amends I was unable to make while I was still in the Navy was that remember my parents had sent these checks to Washington State University, and another semester they sent checks to University of Washington, and they sent checks to CLU too. And I got nothing. I got nothing for it. So the old man, Bob's first sponsor, he had told me that I had 2 choices. I either had to pay my parents back every single nickel they had paid for my education, or I had to go get the degree that they had paid for. And so when I got out of the Navy, I push-started my car. I was still through having to make financial amends with my Navy paycheck, and I got promoted as far as you could in those 2 years. I still was dead broke. I still was push-starting the same car that I got sober in, a 68 Volkswagen hole in the floorboard. I put everything I owned in that car and got it going and driving up the LA freeways. And I'm heading to this little town called Covina, where a university that I had chosen to get this particular technology degree. And on the way up, I started to think, you know what, I got to take like 21 units at a time. I got to get going here. I'm going to have to work at the same time. I'm not going to have much time to go to meetings. I need to get a life. I've heard about people in AA getting a life. I need one of those. And I'll stop by meetings when I get a chance, and I'll get active later, but I need to get a life. And I decided I would just look for the local meeting hall in the town I was going to so I could know where I needed to go if and whenever I needed a meeting. Right? So I'm not even halfway through, and I'm about ready to make a fatal decision. And I pull into this parking lot of what's called the 502 Club, the San Gabriel Valley Alano Club. We actually have a banner on there that calls it Sobriety Capital of the World. We're very humble in Covina. I actually still live there 30 years later. And I pull into that parking lot and I go into that meeting hall, and the man making coffee that day. Of course, I had to get another sponsor. Bob was still had 2 more years to do in the Navy. The ship was going to Asia. We talked about it. I had to get a new sponsor. But I got to tell you, my mindset was not, I need another sponsor. My mindset was, I need a life. I'll go to meetings when I get a chance, but I need to get a life. I pull into that parking lot. I go into that meeting hall, and the man making coffee was this man I described earlier, Eddie Cochran, sobriety date, December 2nd, 1951. And he was just a gentle, his whole body language spoke that he was a gentle man. And he walked over and he said the very same thing that other guy had said when I was fresh out of treatment, but he said it very gently and kindly, not aggressively. He said, "Son, I've never seen you here at the meeting before. Tell me, what you up to?" And I said, this time I had a much better answer. I said, "Sir, it's very nice to meet you. I'm 2 years sober. I'm fresh out of the United States Navy. I'm going to be attending the local university here. You won't see me very often. I need to get a life, and I'm going to be busy at school and work. But I'll stop by when I get a chance." And Eddie had this little giggle. It still rings in my ears, man. And he said, "Oh, son, school and work, fantastic things to do in between meetings, son. School and work are wonderful things for a young man to focus in on, but we do all those things in between meetings." And what he was really giving me was one of the secrets to long-term sobriety comfortably. And what he was really telling me is, son, if you're a real alcoholic, your only chance for survival is you learn to live in Alcoholics Anonymous and you visit the world. Please, son, do not try to hash it out there in the world and visit Alcoholics Anonymous when convenient. And that code for living has been my code ever since that day. First thing he told me to do was to put new guys in my car. My life would get better. I didn't see how that could possibly be. But he was 10 years sober when I was born. So I decided to take this man's direction. I objected a little bit. I got a hole in the floorboard. I got to first start the thing. How could my life get better? You put new guys in your car, your life will get better. And by God, the very first night that I followed his direction, my life got better. I put new guys in my car, and the new guys could push start my car. He didn't say how much better. He just said better. And I got to tell you, in the 33 years that I've been here with you, I'm going to wrap up here real soon. 33 years that I've been here with you, I have found a meaning and purpose in my life that I didn't even know existed for a guy like me. What I do in between meetings is very, very rewarding. Makes me feel like I actually have meaning, purpose, and a place in this world that benefits other people. I'm an active member of my home group. I'm part of a society in Covina and the greater Los Angeles area that is, I feel, is second to none. I'm sure that Kingsport, Tennessee is equal. I hope you feel that. Actually, I think a lot of you from all over the place. But once again, I'm going to go back to, I could not be more proud of this society that we all love so much than what we just did during this pandemic. And what the future of Alcoholics Anonymous now can be with the way that we can interconnect. And when we have both going on, the human touch of our home groups and the interconnectedness of the world, I mean, the opportunities of how effective Alcoholics Anonymous can get are now endless. And I love the fact that I got to live to see this. So I think I'm done tonight, and I wish you all a very happy New Year. Thanks.